Brooke Gehring. Brooke Gehring of Live Green, formerly Patient's Choice, is an original. She's been in the cannabis space in Colorado from the beginning. Welcome to Cannabis Economy. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Check us out on Twitter at CanEconomy. That's two N's and the word economy. Check us out on Facebook using the same handle. Brooke takes us through not only her story, but the greater Colorado narrative from the old 1284 days through day one of adult use, which is Amendment 64, up to today. Incidentally, check out the companion episode to this one, episode 112, the Live Green Tour, also featuring Brooke. Happy to be on Cannabis Radio Network and the Sexpot Comedy Co-op. Brooke Gehring, Live Green. Okay, and so Brooke Gehring, you were so kind to take us through the facility and really share with, and we're still in the facility, but share with us, exactly what goes on here. This is, what goes on with you. We've got Brooke Gehring. We know what she's been doing in the industry, but where are you from? Are you from Colorado?
I am actually from Columbus, Ohio.
Aha, okay.
And I am on year 13 as a Coloradan. So after college, I wanted to head west. Had my eye on California and actually spent a summer in Colorado and moved out a month later. So have really embraced it as my home.
That was that. How did you get to Colorado for the summer?
One of my best friends from college, we went to Miami University.
Of Ohio.
And we decided her father had a place in Breckenridge, so he let us stay in his condo for the summer, and we'd take little road trips for the month and go check out Crested Butte or Aspen, and we ended up in Boulder on 4th of July weekend. So it was just a special place, and she was looking to get her master's. I actually thought I wanted to go into the music industry on the PR side, and so Boulder was going to be a good place. I'd work, save some money, and then potentially go to law school there at CU Boulder.
And let's just make sure that we cover the childhood in the place that's round on the edges and high in the middle, I think?
Round on the ends and high in the middle. The heart of the Midwest. So I'm very thankful to have grown up in the Midwest. I am an only child, so I was very close with my family and my cousins and all of my friends. And actually a few of them today have been able to relocate from Ohio to also be here in Colorado. So I like to think that, it's our core values that we grew up in such a wonderful place, but cannabis is what brought us here.
Got it. So we're Midwestern values in cannabis here.
Yes.
What were your?
Hopefully you can pick up on that.
Absolutely, you're very kind. I can see that. And that's no pun intended. What was it like growing up with your parents as an only child? What did they do?
So growing up, actually, my parents are divorced, so I grew up with my mom, and really she just wanted to make sure that I was safe and happy, and my extracurricular schedule of sports and academic associations and traveling, the same things I do today, just as an adult, that she could keep up with all of that. So I had a really solid support system, and again, not knowing that moving to Colorado would lead me to this part of my career, but they really wanted to support my education and knew that I was somewhat of a free spirit, and I would do whatever it is that I was set out to do, but I would land on my feet no matter what.
Okay, so you're telling us that you always have been kind of over-involved in whatever you're doing, so we appreciate that, and on the tour we heard about that as well. But what do you mean by free spirit, Brooke? I feel like there's more there.
Cannabis has always been a part of my life since I was 15, more so in a social setting, and it wasn't something that defined me, but it was something, to each their own. Life is about choices, and finding balance, and it wasn't something that I necessarily would ever judge people of. It was something that I embraced.
And let's actually take that turn as far as consumers, as far as cannabis culture is concerned. What folks that are not in the industry are now realizing that it isn't just that one type of person that is interested and involved in cannabis. All different stripes of folks are, customers and obviously patients. But take us further through that. You've got 4 locations of the type of, the myriad type of customers that you have.
I think where this all started with medical, we had this idea of what a patient was going to be like. But what a patient is just like you and I, just like your parents, just like your best friends. So everyone needs to be able to choose cannabis and the right delivery method for them. So we have seen the diversity of, 21-year-olds are I would say they're sparse in who our customers and who our patients are, all the way up to, 85-year-olds who want to come in and shop with their grandchildren. So the diversity of the patient base, there's people that have smoked joints in the 60s. There's people that for the first time ever, they're walking into the store and it's like being a kid in a candy store, because they're like, oh my gosh, I have, 20 edibles and I have 15 strains of some of the most beautifully grown and crafted cannabis I've ever seen. I have cartridges. Oh my gosh, what do I do with this? So, and that is why we are here on the front end of the business and on the front end leading the movement, is because we want to educate people. We want them to be comfortable and choose whether they have a relationship. We want that to fit into whatever it is that they do in their own life, in their own career, with their family. So we've really tried to open up and expand our brand. And as we sit here in the production, this is the source to which we can confidently guide our team.
Yeah, and you talk about expanding the brand and obviously the medical side of things. Cannabis is medicine, and whether we're talking about Crohn's disease or coming off of chemotherapy, or if you've got seizures, there's a high dosage for the medical patient. And then there's also, of course, the adult use side. And you guys are going from the brand of Patient's Choice to a different brand.
Yes, we are. So part of where we started out and pioneered in this industry was as Patient's Choice of Colorado, and it is still very much rooted of who and what we do here in this industry today. What we didn't know is when we started operating that Amendment 64 would pass in 2012, and that we would move into implementation, and we would have an opportunity to service even a vaster market of the 21 and over adult use. So what we did as we applied for our licenses, and our Edgewater location has been our diamond in the rough, given that we knew that we would be able to be open from 8 a.m. until midnight. That's 35 extra hours a week. We're less than 1% of the market of the license holders. There's 7 other businesses in Edgewater as well that have that opportunity to be able to service the 21 and over adult public. So what we couldn't necessarily do is limit ourselves to just serving patients. And Patient's Choice, as it was founded as a medical marijuana company, a lot of people associate with the word patients. And there are people that cannabis helps them, whether their ailment is a headache or insomnia or unfortunately Crohn's or late stages of cancer. So we wanted to find a brand that, from a retail side, was inviting all adults into our centers to shop. Mm-hmm. And Live Green Cannabis has actually the side story, the foundation of when I transferred out of commercial banking in 2009 and jumped into the ocean to swim, was when I started a brand, Live Green Consulting. And Live Green Consulting, the purpose of that was, as I helped learn the regulation and educate myself and what was happening at the legislature when licensing was just being drafted. Mm-hmm. Essentially, I was helping about 40 other businesses and clients, whether that be introducing them to attorneys or CPAs, showing them properties, helping them get their sales tax license, setting up their compliance on the front end of their dispensaries. Live Green was all of those things at that time, and so that, my essence and story, is where I started with my brand in cannabis.
Okay, and so then now that is Live Green, kind of the overlay of all of the business. As far as the consulting, how were you able to get your medical up, get your adult use up, and then also consult? How are you able to do so much?
I would say that I am a true insomniac, and my motivation and my drive is in this industry. I think my work speaks for itself, and I have been able to take on so much, on behalf of the industry or consulting in other new markets because of the team and the foundation that we have here within the company. So there is a high level of expectation and confidence that I know when I'm bouncing around from meeting to meeting, whether that's sitting with regulators or that's, sitting down with other business owners or what potential new ventures could be, that this is operating. Everyone day to day is accountable to the quality of work.
And you do have your kind of bona fides in that you were, there with Amendment 64. And so we do like to take the opportunity when we've got one of you guys, one of the original folks, to talk about that time period and what it was like. To put you on the spot, we know that Trent, your cousin, was working behind the counter on day one, right, on January 1st, 2014. But take us back to 2009, 2010. What was it like?
2009 and 2010 were 14-hour days right out of the gate, trying to just get your feet on the ground, just trying to understand what is it that we legally could do to be able to have this state right that we could exercise, but also to make sure that we weren't setting ourselves up for potential being raided, not being able to have certain access to banking. So in those early age, I shouldn't say early age, but it feels like, as we said.
Well, it was early age, absolutely, for the Colorado market without question.
The early stage, really trying to find like-minded individuals. So there was a huge sense of community since day one in cannabis. As saturated as the market may seem or appear to be as you drive through the state today, what it was founded on were people that all believed in this plant and all believed that, this should be a viable industry and business. And so getting together, whether that was through trade associations or that was all meeting at city council, it really was banding together to help understand and help work directly with the state and participate as stakeholders so that they could craft rules that would allow for us to flourish.
What did you learn as a person and a business owner during that time when legislation was being drafted and you were a part of that?
During that time is when, and we're talking, in less than 10 months from leaving the bank on a special assets receivership team of where, you're actually on the other side of regulation. So coming out of a regulated marketplace, how quickly the consulting progressed and how many people were still trying to figure out. I learned that if they're figuring it out, I want to figure it out for myself. And so the entrepreneurial spirit really kicked in. I would, as many others in this industry, I have a high threshold for risk and pain. So really set out to figure out what that was going to look like. And my initial vision was to have a Cherry Creek, which is a shopping district here in Denver, to have offices for the consulting business and to have this kind of boutique cannabis store. I learned very quickly after signing into a lease that it was not affordable, it was not going to bring in revenues, and that I should probably look at more dense areas, in the Denver metro area to have a licensed business. So, sometimes you start out on one path and that changes, and that led me to Edgewater, Colorado, which is where the first Live Green cannabis store did open its doors on January 1st of 2014.
And you say that sometimes you pick a path and things change. Talk about banking. How long were you in banking, and what was the ultimate reason for leaving? Talk about the banking first, though.
Of course. So throughout my career, after graduating from Miami University, I was always in some sort of consultative compliance position. I was a director of compliance for a national commercial and residential brokerage firm that serviced over 500 employees, brick and mortar branches, net branches. I was very busy traveling around doing continuing education, doing licensing, conducting audits with regulatory agencies and bodies. So as the market started to come down and crash, which there's a lot of people in this industry that experienced that firsthand, I saw an opportunity then to move into commercial banking and was recruited to be on a special assets workout team. So we're talking business lines on the low side, $2 million up to $60 million, multi-generational companies that were in the Rocky Mountain region. There were meat packing, there was, the logging industry. We were going to work with a lot of developers who had started building huge buildings that no longer had the funding or resources to do so. So my exposure to this side of banking that no one wants to be a part of or talk about was where I really gained the experience and the thick skin, and knowing that, this is regulation and contracts and how important it is to be able to survive that from an economic impact. And so it was depressing, though. I was liquidating people's assets, putting businesses, in a position where they might not be able to keep the doors open any longer. And the goal of that was to train and go out to Walnut Creek, to the Bay Area, and to finally get to California. So again, we're not talking cannabis here. It wasn't until I was showing some investors and clients, they were interested in the real estate portfolio that I was managing at the bank. And I was spending my evenings showing properties and industrial spaces that had been sitting empty, and they told me they were going to grow marijuana. And then I might show a retail storefront, and they told me they were going to sell marijuana. So that pretty much triggered. I spent the next month cleaning out my desk and making sure all of my work was done. Probably not exactly what that employer wanted to see or hear, but I knew that I was going to embark on what would be the unknown.
So you weren't kind of, a lot of the business owners were kind of, well, that business just failed, so I'll just go into this business. That's what a lot of folks say. What you're saying is you were in that kind of system of, okay, that's going out of business. Here's what we can do with these assets. Here's what we can do with these properties, and then you start to meet these cannabis people, and then you just jump in. Is that right?
That is right. That is really as crazy as it sounds, and I can sit here today and smile about it because we're still sitting here today. But yeah, I was so fascinated by the idea that there were going to be legal outlets for people to grow or sell. Again, MIPS, I don't even think were being talked about, extraction labs at that time. So what I knew of banking and how highly regulated and the government drives that force entirely is that I needed to be in front of council members understanding, it all starts at a local level. It's the locals that really invite and participate in supporting the businesses that are in their communities. So meeting with council, being a part of that process as they first formed in Denver, the marijuana committee that was going to put into place licensing in Denver, which happened before the state even had licensing. I started speaking to lobbyists and other advocates who were working with the legislature at that time to draft, which is House Bill 1284, the first piece of legislation that actually opened up this industry. So You
were there from the beginning. 1284, you're there.
I was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I was there when, some of the operators that are in this industry today, some of the attorneys, some of the true leaders were holding meetings, at a local bar or restaurant, and we were meeting at 7 p.m. just trying to network and find out what was going and coming down the pipeline and what happens next.
I've seen some of those pictures, right?
Yes. So, there's a lot to be proud of here, but none of it from thereafter it's still not any easier. It's just that you become more resilient, the priorities of what needs to happen from a business standpoint, but on a personal level, the passion that I have towards being a part of a movement, being a part of, we are changing, we're coming out of a prohibition of decades of, what has oppressed so much of our society, and that cannabis is a plant and the values that it has. So again, I believe in all of that, and it allows for me to be the driving force of what we do every day.
Well, there you go, and that kind of brings us up to the precipice of 2016. As you look at the year 2016, 30-40% of Americans are going to be voting on legal cannabis, obviously, outside of the state of Colorado. But what do you see in that year, in this year, for Brooke and for Live Well?
Live green.
Oh, Live Green.
Yes.
Oh, God.
We are friends with Live Well, certainly, and respect what they do, but we are here at Live Green.
Yeah.
So
It's an easy mistake, I guess, right?
It is an easy mistake.
Yeah.
So, but in 16, we're really going to be able to thrive. So what we have been doing up until this stage is trying to make sure that our foundation, our infrastructure, our efficiencies are, well positioned so that we can compete within the market. We are by no means the biggest. We're far from the smallest, but we want to be able to have our brand position be strong and that we are here to stay.
Yeah.
So 16, we are excited and going to be rolling out the new brand. So as Patient's Choice comes down off of the signage at some of our few of our locations, Live Green will go up there, and Live Green in spirit of the brand is a lifestyle. It's a choice. It's something that you can wear your shirt whether you're in New York or you're in Colorado, and people aren't going to necessarily identify with it right away, but they're probably going to ask you about it. And that's what we want. We want to be able to educate people. We want to be able to have the best selection of all of the top brands and all of the top products. We want to service the 21 and over adult use who choose that as for recreational purposes, and the people that are coming in because they might not be a resident, they might not qualify or live in a medical state. So we are going to be able to provide them products and services that make them feel better.
When you shifted into your brand mode and your business mode, I need to tell you, I can't describe it, but there's the advocacy Brooke, and then or activist Brooke, and then there's business Brooke, and those were two different looks that I got. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, hopefully we're friends on both sides of that.
Absolutely. It was very interesting to see.
I wear many hats and have had to since day one, especially since starting in the dispensary and then, bridging out to the government side. But I truly care about this business. I care about our company, and I am able to do everything I do day to day because as a stakeholder, I can speak with that testimony.
Indeed. And from 1284 to 64, thank you for everything that you've done, right?
Thank you very much for that. So, it's taken a small army, and it's taken aligning, with people that don't always have the same interest. And I will share this publicly now, and I think a few people might know this. When 64 was on the ballot, I was not in support of it. I was actually incredibly scared. I was a few years into operating a medical marijuana company, and I'm like, oh no, is this too soon? Is this too much attention? Or, are the feds going to come in here and shut us down because, we're pushing the envelope? The authors of 64, I work right alongside of them. I have a great deal of respect for that entire team. So it was really, again, everyone has their own level of resistance to change, but I found participating in that process and learning as much as I can then made me comfortable to be able to come back into our business to implement what needed to happen for us to continue to grow.
Right. Even though I don't necessarily love it to begin with, I'm going to jump in and be a part of it so that I know exactly what's happening.
Yes, and it wasn't even like, no, I don't want this to happen next year. It was more so, okay, how do we, shift and be mobile to be able to be open-minded? And then when we go to Washington, D.C., or when we go down to the Capitol, like, how do we speak about something that we don't know in this huge social experiment, as our governor likes to refer to it? But really what it did, I believe in decriminalization. I believe in personal rights and state rights, and if there was going to be an opportunity for all eyes to be on Colorado, then, taking the experience that we had thus far and aligning with other like-minded professionals to be a part of that voice.
Excellent. And you certainly are part of that voice. I have 3 final questions. I'm going to share with you what they are, and then I'll ask you them. The first question is, what has most surprised you in cannabis? And I'm sure that you've kind of answered that along the way, but we'll give you another opportunity. The next is, what has most surprised you in life? It's a slightly bigger question, maybe. And then the final one, which might be the most difficult one, is on the soundtrack of Brooke Gehring's life. What is one track? What is one song that's definitely on that soundtrack? Yeah. So these are the three questions. What has most surprised you in cannabis?
Well, I would love to say that I have been surprised by all of it, but I think the biggest surprise really came when the government of Colorado was on board with 64, and they were listening to the voters speak, and they wanted to sit down and be active, and they created a process to do that. Because I think the fear was, okay, everyone voted, the numbers point to yes, but what is next? So they gave opportunity to the businesses that had, some of them had not made it to that point yet, but they gave an opportunity to have legal outlets to the adult use market and be able to talk about taxation and be able to talk about, the economic impacts and how the Department of Health. So I think the biggest surprise was watching all of the agencies, law enforcement included, coming together because they wanted to learn and they wanted to get it right.
Yeah, and we've spoken with, to name some names, Brian Vicente and Christian Cederberg and Steve Fox and Mason Tavert, and they've taken us through exactly what was happening behind the scenes then, and even the guys at Denver Relief, Ian and Kayvon and just everybody that was a part of that. This grand movement really did involve everybody, and that is the reason that it was successful right off the bat.
Absolutely. So again, it wasn't just one group or one interest that was going to lead this. It's like, we need to download as much information. We have to segment this up into work groups that are compartmentalized. There needs to be a very clear, transparent process, because at the end of the day, we asked the government to expedite and implement something in a year and a half time, which has taken decades and decades in most states.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so that's that question and answer. What has most surprised you in life, Brooke Gehring?
Cannabis has most surprised me in
That
life.
you're in it?
That I'm in it. So, and I think just the choices of life actually surprise you, because choices that you made when you were 16 or at 24 or at 30, all have pointed you into a different direction. So personally, I've worked since I was 16 years old. I like to be in a comfortable, state, mentally, physically, and education has been something that has been one of my core values. So going to college, something I was able to accomplish. Moving to Colorado, I grew up in Ohio. I wasn't sure that I was going to end up in Boulder or Denver or wherever that might be. So when I moved out here, I didn't know whether I would be out here for a year or if I was going to be out here sitting here today 13 years later. But I've made choices at times in life. I've taken on jobs that are almost too much responsibility for one person, but that's where I've grown the most, and that's where I have, gained experience in life.
Adversity.
Adversity, absolutely.
What was that first job?
The first job, I worked at Rite Aid Pharmacy.
Behind the counter?
Behind the counter. So I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist at that point in my life. So very similar to a dispensary in many ways. But again, I was in there fielding calls every day and all of the prescriptions and working side by side with the pharmacist. But it was a customer service role. It was a role to where, I needed to be educated and I needed to be friendly, and I got to see my grandpa come in every day.
There you go. You've come full circle.
Yes. So again, all of these choices in life, and then from Rite Aid, I went to retail, and then I, kind of explored and got into consulting, into compliance, banking, regulations. So every door that opened has provided me experience that allows for me to run our business and continue to operate in this place.
You've got the perfect job for yourself.
I've created that over time.
Yeah. All right, and so the final question on the soundtrack of Brooke Gehring's life, what is at least one song or one track?
I'm happy to answer this, but I cannot sing. So
The only
So
person,
I wish that it would be playing in the background now.
the only person that has sang has been Troy. So.
Yes, so, and if I could, I would. It's not one of my skills this morning. So it would actually probably be Blackbird by the Beatles.
Oh my goodness.
And I really resonate with, kind of the verse of like, you've been waiting for this moment all of your life.
Yeah, take these broken wings and learn to fly.
Absolutely. So again, not anything I could have chose a decade ago or 2 years ago would tell me that this is the success, or this would be the path that will be the career for the rest of my life.
Fly, Brooke, fly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seth. We'll see you tonight.
You got it. And there you have Brooke Gehring. She did get emotional there at the end. She's put her heart and soul into this thing. Glad that she is having success. So very much appreciate her time touring and talking. Very happy to be on Cannabis Radio and the Sexpot Comedy Co-op. Check us out on Twitter at CanEconomy. 2 N's in the word economy. Thanks to Brooke Gehring.